Welcome back, folks. Well, today we see the Mets bullpen taking their shape right now with the latest move. Ryne Stanek coming back to the New York Mets, really solidifying the bullpen. Yes, I think there may be one or two more options, but folks, it looks like one of the most important facets of the team is just about set. What is Ryne Stanek? What does he bring to that bullpen? How successful was he last year in terms of, improving? Because when we acquired him from the Mariners, there was doubt. Ryne Stanek had those lower back issues, but throughout the course of the year, it seemed like that resolved itself. And by the time the playoffs came around, Ryne Stanek was viewed as a weapon. The guy is a 98 miles per hour fireballer. That is how fast he throws on average. So we're going to examine that move. We're also going to give you a Pete Alonso update today. And Michael King of the San Diego Padres, one of the most top echelon pitchers in all of baseball, seems to have become available. All right, let's examine that as well. And our last segment today, we are going to get to your comments. We introduced that last video, and we did that a couple months ago, but I want to try to incorporate that more because we have some great comments on the channel, some great comments. So we are going to get to that lastly. Also, just a quick note about your comments. Leave a 62 at the end of your comment, just indicating that you want me to take a look at your comment and you would like that to be considered to be read in a future episode. Because I don't want some people don't want their comments used, so I don't want anybody to have that fear. Leave as many comments as you please, and if you don't put a 62, don't worry, I will not consider that comment to be used in a future episode, so do not worry. All right, so Ryne Stanek, let's get to that move. So the Mets reunited with a key piece from their 2024 postseason bullpen today. They agreed to terms, one-year deal. The Mets have not confirmed the contract because it's not official, but according to Mark Feinsand, the Stanek deal is worth 4.5 million and it includes 500,000 in incentives. So by the time this deal is all said and done, it seems to be about a $5 million deal. Stanek was a midseason trade acquisition of the Mets. He produced a 3.38 ERA over 7 postseason appearances, earning 2 holds and a win. He owns a career 2.89 career ERA, and in the playoffs, a 3.65 career regular season mark over 8 years with the Rays, the Marlins, the Astros, the Mariners, and the Mets. The great thing about a guy like Ryne Stanek is he's got tremendous postseason experience. In 2022, when Stanek was with the Astros, he was lights out. And that was one of the reasons why I was extremely ecstatic to acquire him at the deadline. A guy who brings that unique fireballing dynamic at the end of the bullpen. He can fill in as a closer. He can fill in as an 8th inning guy. He can fill in the 7th, 6th inning. Wherever you need him, his skills translate, and there is a lot there. He's a guy that has a very high ceiling, in my opinion, if all is going well. And I want to actually tell you what went well, because when we acquired him, my thing was, will he resort back to his 2022 form? Because 2023 was okay, it was mediocre, but it wasn't lights out. But we saw significant improvement in the advanced metrics. You'll look at those wipeout stats, and I'm going to go over momentarily how I'm pretty sure the Mets have noticed this as well. The 2024 advanced stats showed dramatic improvement over 2023, and I'm going to go over that with you momentarily because it actually jumped out at me. Okay, so upon arriving in Queens in late July, Stanek initially struggled. He allowed 7 runs over his first 5 outings, but he rounded into form from then on, relying on a triple-digit fastball to produce a 2.92 ERA over his final 12 appearances heading into the postseason. That is significant. People who deem that his tenure with the Mets wasn't successful, you have to break it down. His first couple starts, as I just mentioned, he struggled. But if you really paid attention to how he was doing with the Mariners, he had lower back spasms. So it was quite evident and quite obvious that Stanek was suffering those lingering effects. But as the spasms got better, or as Stanek was able to deal with it, you could see that he rounded into forms, final 12 appearances, 2.92 ERA, and that was approaching lights out. In October, Stanek ascended to the Mets' top setup role, proving to be one of Carlos Mendoza's most trusted late innings weapons, as last year we suffered losses of Daniel Nunez and many other relievers, to say the least. So to have a guy like Ryne Stanek there is such a monumental weapon. And this year, if you go into it, and I was just trying to have fun. All right, what could the bullpen potentially look like? Of course, there could be a couple youngsters that I don't have in the equation at the moment, but right now it's very solid. Again, like I said, we have a lot of dynamic options in the bullpen, but it heads off or leads off with Edwin Diaz, AJ Minter, Daniel Nunez, Jose Budo, Ryne Stanek, so he would be like the fourth or fifth best option. And then you got guys like Reed Garrett, Sean Reed Foley, who have decent stuff. And then you have the lefty Danny Young, which still you can have an upgrade there. If you heard Tim Hill was an option the last couple of days. Tim Hill is a very talented lefty. I mean, that could be the final piece to the bullpen. And if your bullpen looks like Edwin Diaz, AJ Minter, Daniel Nunez, Jose Budo, Ryne Stanek, Reed Garrett, Sean Reed Foley, and Tim Hill, I mean, you have one of the best bullpens in all of baseball. And that's not to mention some youngsters as well that may come up throughout the year. All right. So Stanek's 30 career postseason appearances are tied for ninth most among active players. And to boot, he won the World Series with the Astros in 2022 when Stanek could be considered one of the top relievers in all of the game. I think only Edwin Diaz possibly had a better year. That was when Edwin Diaz was completely lights out. All right, so now 33 years old, Stanek is coming off a year in which he ranked in the 96th percentile among major league pitchers in fastball velocity, topping out at 100.6 miles per hour. So this guy can get it up to 101. His whiff rate is 33.2%, which is generated largely via his slider, split-fingered fastball, also rated in the 94th percentile. Okay, so let me give you some of the extra data and work that I put in trying to see how much of an improvement he made in 2024, especially what type of effect did the Mets pitching lab have on Stanek as a whole. So I looked at some advanced metrics that drastically improved in 2024, and let's get over it right now. Let's get into it right now. Expected ERA. So his expected ERA dramatically increased in 2024, or dramatically got better, to say the least. It was rated as a 73 on Baseball Savant from 2023 when it was a 55. So that is an 18-point increase. So that's one positive stat. Expected batting average was in the 84th percentile. It went up a year from the 76th percentile. 89th percentile in 2024. So that's a plus 13. His chase percentage, and this was the most dramatic increase from 2023. In 2024, he was in the 85th percentile in chase rate, and that went up from 2023 when he was only in the 30th percentile. So that stat dramatically increased by 55%. His whiff percentage in 2024, 94th percentile, as mentioned earlier. That went up from the 81st percentile in 2023. That is an increase of 13%. His K percentage, 82nd percentile. That was an increase from the 53rd percentile. So that's another dramatic increase, a 29-point jump. His walk rate, wasn't great in 2024, wasn't great in 2023, But again, we saw an improvement in 2024. It went from the 20th percentile to the 28th percentile in 2024. So that is a positive jump of 8 percentage points. Other stats like hard hit percentage, ground ball percentage, and extension, those also went up a couple of ticks in 2024, but nothing to write home about. But if you look at the wipeout stats that you look at in a reliever like chase rate, whip rate, K percentage, hard hit, expected batting average, expected ERA. I mean, this guy has shown dramatic improvement. In fact, he started showing that he was trending more towards the 2022 version of Ryne Stanek than the 2023 version. So that's why I like for $4.5 million, $4.5 million, no risk. I like this move. I gotta love this move. I liked it at the deadline. I loved it at the deadline. I love it right now. All it does is add extra depth and extra weapon, and it takes pressure off the other guys as well, because that's also another factor. I mean, you don't want the Daniel Nunez coming in every high leverage situation. AJ Minter, you don't want to have to use Edwin Diaz in the eighth inning, multiple times throughout the year. Yes, if it's a big situation or very rare occurrence, but you need to have a whole slew of guys who have these advanced numbers and who can basically work in high leverage situations. Now, Tim Hill is a guy that the Mets were interested in the last couple of days, and the thought process is, now the Mets would be interested. But Tim Hill, in my opinion, serves another lane. He's a different purpose reliever, and I think that he is that upgrade still over a guy like Danny Young. So let's sit back, relax, and wait on that. But that's my take on Ryne Stanek. How do you feel? How do you feel? Do you like the move? Was there somebody else out there that you would have preferred? And how is the bullpen looking in your opinion? In my opinion, right now, we're looking like, one of the top bullpens in all of baseball. I would say we're approaching a top 5 bullpen. Yes, I'm looking at through, probably rose-colored glasses. Obviously I am a Met fan, but, I do think that we have a lot of potential in the bullpen. All right, so let's move on right now to our next. All right, folks, as we begin and start to get into our Alonso update, if you haven't got a chance to like the video, please take a second now to like. And if you are brand new to the channel, or if you come back all the time, give us an opportunity, subscribe. It really helps the channel grow. And again, I continue to thank you. Even for those who have, I would say a differing view, who we don't see eye to eye, that's part of the fun of it as well. I would love you to join, consider subscribing as well. If you've one who's subscribed, unsubscribed because you don't like my viewpoint, hey, you know what? That's part of the fun of it. I need you here, so consider subscribing again. All right, so the Mets situation with Mr. Pete Alonso, the polar bear. All right, so it's been, I'd say, the last 4 days, a tumultuous last 4 days. And it really stems back to Saturday, Steve Cohen making those remarks that, we could potentially move on from the polar bear, that our payroll's increasing, that there may be a reality where the polar bear will not be on the team. People saw that as, I would say people took that in many different views. A lot of people were very happy that a guy like Steve Cohen would be that transparent. But as far as bringing back Alonso, I always felt that, he left the door open, and he literally said, we're leaving the door open. But number two, he spoke directly to the polar bear, expressed his frustration. And I think that was his way of saying, come on, Pete, let's go. If you really truly want to be a Met, let's go. All right, so yesterday it came out that Francisco Lindor, also a teammate, obviously, of Alonso for the last 4 years, wants the polar bear to come back. Also, it has been said that there have been rumblings, and this is not confirmed, but one of our good subscribers notated that in the Dominican Republic, Soto did an interview, and he mentioned that he would like the Mets to bring back the polar bear. Again, that is from a subscriber. I didn't hear the interview, but we did confirm Lindor does want the polar bear back. And that really is important, folks, because these two guys have made long-term commitments to the team. So their opinions have a little more weight than other guys. Brandon Nimmo, I grouped in there as well. But, those guys have significant weight to what they say. So Steve Cohen probably, based on several factors, considered to re-engage. So the Mets have officially re-engaged with the Polar Bear camp, but also, according to Andy Martino, there are other factors why this may possibly work out, and this is what's part of the update today. And you know what? I just want to get to a Zach Scott comment that I highlighted, but first I want to give the update. It's very, it kind of stood out to me, so I want to get to that as well. All right, so New York Mets owner Steve Cohen acknowledged Saturday that while the team was moving forward with its annual offseason roster building exercise with or without the polar bear, there's always a possibility the free agent first baseman would be back. And Andy Martino last week, it was said on several shows, SNY, on Twitter, that it got really close last week, really close between Alonso and those Toronto Blue Jays. But unfortunately, I guess if you're a Blue Jays fan, there was a big hang-up. Hence, that is why the potential pivot back towards the Mets, according to Martino. So, Boris and Alonso have pivoted back because of those hangups. According to Martino, the Mets could potentially pivot back toward negotiating with Alonso's camp after that specific hangup with Alonso and those Blue Jays. Again, these are quotes from Martino, and he goes, talks were advancing last week between Alonso's camp and Toronto. League sources said, but a potential stumbling block there could have been deferred money based on Toronto's heavily deferred agreement with outfielder Anthony Santander. Santander is deferring more than half of the originally reported $92.5 million contract. Reports were that the Blue Jays were interested in signing Alonso last week. And they used an analogy 10-yard line. Given that it seems possible Blue Jays are insisting on deferring some of Alonso's salary, which might prompt Alonso's camp to balk. So based on what happened with Santander and them deferring such a high portion of the contract, it seemed like they tried to use those same tactics with the polar bear. And what that would do is it would lower Pete's average annual number for them this year. So, I don't know what their salary is, but let's just say it's close to 300 million, right? Let's say it's 280 million. And Pete wants to make 30 million, right? So the Blue Jays don't want to get over 300 million so that they don't get those extra penalties. So they'll say, hey, you know what? We'll give you $20 million for this year and we'll defer 10 million. So according to your average salary this year, it would be 20 million and the 10 million will be deferred. According to something like that, the Alonso camp was not willing to defer the amount of money that the Blue Jays were insisting. Okay, so we know Boris can be tough. We know Pete Alonso, he could be kind of resilient and tough as well. So they backed out. And, Alonso has said no multiple times. So he's very firm in what he wants. But I think if he goes to a situation like the Blue Jays, it would have to be more than perfect. He's going to uproot his family, his whole situation, go to a new place, go for that, fighting for that 1 year contract. I mean, probably be a 3-year contract or maybe 4 years with the Toronto Blue Jays, but he'd have that opt out after the first year. So thus, this would also be a contract year. Everything would have to be right. And if this deferment is a big issue, and I could see where it would be a big issue because you give an advantage to the team because the team, number one, gains more flexibility. Number two, that deferred salary is still in the pockets of the Blue Jays. They get to invest that money. They get to make money off of your money. So wouldn't you rather have that money in your pocket? For a guy like Alonso who hasn't hit the bank yet, hasn't had that big long-term contract, I could see where he would be more like, you know what, I'm more comfortable getting most of the money not deferred. And it's not like he's getting an $800 million contract where he's still getting a lot to put a lot of money in his pocket. So I could see where the Alonso camp would be hung up there. All right, so that's our quick update on Alonso today. The Mets and Alonso, they are in talks, and a reunion could be likely. A reunion really could be likely. I think in the back of the minds of Boris, in the back of the minds of Alonso, if they're thinking about saying no, or they're thinking about playing hardball, they're gonna think about that conversation that Steve Cohen had on Saturday and how frustrated he was, and really, is it worth saying no to one of the last suitors that you potentially have in this entire market? Because we heard the talks and the rumors. Ryan Mountcastle, Spencer Torkelson, those may not be Pete Alonso, but those were real options, folks. Real options. I mean, Detroit Tigers, they're willing to trade Torkelson. Yes, they are. Their asking price was 2 top 15 prospects. Maybe that's a little high. Maybe you can work that deal to be, a little less, but they are willing to trade Torkelson. Ryan Mountcastle, another guy that it seems like he was on the block. So there are players where the Mets could pivot to. I would have liked for them to pivot a month and a half ago if Alonso wasn't the end prize, so that the options would be better, but we are where we are. A guy like Yandy Diaz is a guy too. He's on the Rays. He's a guy who won the batting title, not last year, but in 2023. But he's got a great hit tool, and he's a guy as a 1-year stopgap. I would take that guy over Mountcastle, and I would take him over Torkelson as a 1-year stopgap. Very important to note. All right. So let's get into our next part of the video, and that is discussing Michael King. And the first thing I want to do is talk about a trade. I think it was proposed by Mets Marais. So let's get into that right now. All right, so before we get into the trade package, let's talk about Michael King for all of you who are not exactly familiar. Up until 2023, Michael King was almost exclusively used as a reliever. The Yankees eventually shifted King to the starting rotation, and he posted an amazing 1.88 ERA over 8 starts to end that season. The Yankees then capitalized on that success and shipped King to San Diego as part of the Juan Soto trade, where the right-hander experienced his first full season as a starter. So last year, in his first full season as a starter, King again exceeded all expectations, posting career highs in innings, strikeouts, and he finished 7th place in the Cy Young Award winning voting. He was especially dominant in the second half, recording a 2.15 ERA with 72 strikeouts against 21 walks, while only giving up 3 homers in 62 innings. King was dominant in his first postseason start, striking out 12 batters and walking none, leading the Padres to a 4-0 victory over the Braves. King threw 6 innings only twice in 2023, but he made it through at least 6 frames in 15 of his 30 starts, allowing 3 or fewer runs in 14 of those outings. King was last year, King had a phenomenal year. His advanced stats show that as well. I'm not going to go over that in this video. If we were to get him, we definitely would break him down a little bit more. But King has 5-pitch mix. The guy is a sinker, a 4-seamer, a changeup, a sweeper, and a slider. And, Clay Holmes is a guy who is trying to follow in the footsteps of Michael King. The thing about Clay Holmes is right now he has a 3-pitch mix. I think he needs to add, like a Michael King, 1 or 2 more pitches to be successful. All right. So let's talk about the package. So, the amount that King makes this year is not going to be a lot. It looks like the Padres went to arbitration with him. King filed an $8.8 million request, and the club countered it with $7.3 million. And this is where I don't get it. The reason why it's this low is because a majority of King's career, he was a reliever. If he was a starting pitcher, a year before he entered free agency, this would probably be closer to $30 million if he was this talented, and he was that successful. So, also, Garrett Crochet, again, he's also a guy with a low arbitration level because, he didn't pitch a lot out of the rotation. So, but I don't understand why, even for a guy as talented as King and for as successful he was, why, the San Diego Padres would fight over $1 million. But all right, whatever. That's besides the point. So he would be a rental because next year he would be a free agent. King might not command as hefty of a return because he's only going to be a rental. Um, so this is going to be what the trade package was. And I actually plugged this into the baseball trade calculator and it was almost 100% match. So whoever put this deal together, I would assume maybe they did look at baseball trade values. So in this package, the Mets would be receiving Michael King, and a future top end starter on their team to go along with Kodai Senga and Sean Manaea. And the Padres would receive Drew Gilbert, Blade Tidwell, and Tyler McGill. So in terms of trade value, Michael King, he's rated at 27.7 on baseball trade values, which I'll round up to a 28. And Drew Gilbert, Tyler McGill, Blade Tidwell, that cumulative value equals 28.3. So it's almost an exact match. Gilbert's rated 12.2, McGill is 11, Tidwell is 5.2. So you get a guy in Drew Gilbert who was a top 100 prospect. I'm not sure if he's still a top 100 prospect because he was injured last year, but his value did take a bit of a dive because of that. But here's the deal. If you are the Padres, you're not going to get that mega package because there is only 1 year left of Michael King. But in this package, you get Drew Gilbert, a guy you can have for 6 years, and he can be, play center field. He has a pretty good upside, a pretty good hit tool. You have Blade Tidwell, a pitcher who was a top, I think he was rated, drafted in the second round a few years back, but he's a top pitching candidate. You have him for 6 years. And McGill, I believe he's got 2 or 3 years left on his contract. And McGill has shown promise as of late. You can put him in the rotation. You can put him in the bullpen. So that's not a bad trade package. If it's me, would I do it for a 1 year rental? I would really have to heavily consider it. And I'm a big fan of a couple of these guys. I really am. And if you're not a fan of a Drew Gilbert, like, is Michael King the guy that you'd want to use these chips for? Like, do you want to use your Blade Tidwell and your Drew Gilbert chips on Michael King for a potential 1 year contract? I mean, then I got to think about David Stearns. Michael King is going to be 30 years old. Like, is that the player that going into his age 31 season next year, are you going to resign him? Is this virtually only going to be a 1 year deal and you'd be giving up 6 years of Tidwell, 2.5 years of McGill, and 6 years of Gilbert? I'm not even sure Stearns would want to do it. It really depends on what would be the long-term vision for King. If you're going to swing around and offer him a 4 or 5 year extension, okay, yeah, this deal makes sense. But I guess it depends on what David Stearns would want to do. All right, so that is the Michael King trade. And let's get to a couple of your comments in the last video. And again, the last video, I didn't ask you, but from every video going on, I want you to put a 62 at the end of your comment, indicating that you would like me to consider your comment. So, because I noticed some people might not want their comments to be read. So let's look at some of those comments. Okay, so my last video detailed that the Mets and Pete Alonso re-engaging and potentially working on a contract for like the 10th time. So it talked about their re-engagement, and then the title of it is it going to be a mistake for the Mets to do it? So the first comment I'm going to read from Dan. I don't think Dan would mind. So Dan writes, Alonso left like over 150 runners on base. In fact, he left close to 300 runners on base, so even double that. I'm over it. Let's just add a versatile player, rotate the position based on matchups, and have a strong bullpen. We won't miss Alonso popping up in crucial situations. And the reason why I'm reading that is because like that comment had 11 responses. So, he generated good conversation. But that's where I think a lot of MLB was on that, frankly, Dan. That's why there's not a whole lot of suitors out there, because of the fact that Alonso didn't have a great year last year. He had a down year. And maybe people are worrying about the age, but also people are worrying about the one-dimensional nature of Alonso. I mean, if he's not hitting home runs, he's not a high average guy. He's not the best defender. He's not athletic. He's a guy that needs to hit home runs, needs to drive in runs. And if he's leaving 100 mentioned 150, but if he's leaving hundreds of runners on base and not hitting with runners in scoring position, he's not doing his job, and his value dramatically sinks. But then you got to look at really the market is right now, and do you have many viable options that are significantly better or even better? Right? If it was a month ago, I'd say, yeah, we can go in a multitude of different directions. But right now, I guess maybe that was the genius of the Boris camp. Yeah, pretend like you're interested, pretend like we're at the 10-yard line. And then all of a sudden, when nobody else is interested, now we're going to jack our price up and we're going to demand like all these ridiculous things. Maybe that was the strategy. It seems like it could have been. But at the end of the day, David Stearns and Steve Cohen are going to remain firm. They are going to remain very rigid on what they want. You recommend let's just add a versatile player, rotate the position based on matchups. I don't think first base is a position that really. I mean, you could do it. You really could do it, but who are you going to rotate? Like Winker there? I mean, I guess you could, but if you're a team that's contending with the Dodgers, that you want stuff, you want stability. You want stability. And next year, I think we're going to have more options. Let's see how Clifford develops. Let's see if Guerrero hits the open market. Let's see if Murakami, the first baseman from Japan, 24, 25-year-old, let's see if he hits the open markets. And throughout the course of the year, I suspect there's going to be 4 or 5 other first base options that hit the market. Okay, so great stuff, Dan. Great job generating conversation with that comment. One of the top comments. Another top comment. All right, and this is from Donnie. Donnie writes, asked 2 questions. Do you believe that this is a Boris ploy, or if it's true? Honestly, I believe right now that Boris doesn't have many options left. After hearing from Andy Martino that he screwed that one up, and then the Angels, I never really believed that that was a viable option, right? I never believed. I know that Angels owner, he can do pretty silly stuff. Pujols contract, Rendon contract. So out of nowhere, this guy could be like, all right, give Pete 130, 140 million over 5 years. It'll be a lot less than what we gave Pujols. But how many times can you make the same mistake over and over? And if Pete Alonso, even if he got more money in year 1, is that going to be his best long-term career option? And I think the Angels would have to literally blow him out of the water for him to consider that. So I truly believe that this is not a ploy by Boris, but this is literally an only option left. He's exploring, as Pete Alonso's agent, one of the only options left, solid options left in the Pete Alonso market. And your number 2 question is, what trade for a Michael King would look like? So, thanks to Mesmerized, the trade that kind of like was almost right on the money, right on the money was Blade Tidwell, Tyler McGill, and Drew Gilbert. There were other trades you can do, but I think that's a trade that passes the baseball trade calculator. Sometimes obviously it might take a little more than that. I'm not looking through rose-colored glasses. A guy like Michael King, who is one of the top starters in the game, they might want more than that, like Tidwell. But you also give it a lot of potential there. But you also want to see, what is Stearns willing to do? Is he willing to try to sign this guy up for a 4 or 5 year contract? That's what I would want to do. If I give up multiple top prospects and multiple guys that I think have a future with my team, I'd want to at least have a 5-year run with this guy, at least a 5-year run. And also, I think it's good too. A guy like Michael King has pitched a lot of innings out of the bullpen, so he hasn't really pitched as much of other guys by the time he's 30. So that's a other good note. All right, folks, if you've gotten to this far in the video, again, I have to personally thank you. You're driving the channel, and I do appreciate that. Let's go for our next short-term goal of 4,000 subscribers. So continue to like, continue to share, continue to drive this channel, and I really do appreciate you. By opening day, I want to have this really up and running. All right, folks, thank you so much, and everybody have a great day.